If you've never used silk screens, or if you have and you want to know which stage of clay is the best to use them on, then this video is for you. Hi my fellow potters, Marie here from Pottery Crafters. In this video, I'm going to go through each step on how to use silk screens on your pottery. It's a fun and easy way to decorate your pottery. These are great to use, especially if you're not good at drawing, like I am. Not good at drawing. I'll be applying silk screens to 4 different stages of clay to see which one or which ones work the best, and give you some really good tips along the way. You'll find out which stage or stages of clay you can apply the underglaze to the silk screen, the consistency that your underglaze needs to be in, and the firing and glazing process of the silk screen. All the supplies used in this video are listed for you below in the show notes. Let's make some cool silk screen designs. These ready-made silk screens make the process much simpler. I have a link below for you in the show notes. I'll start with using the silk screen on wet clay. Here's a quick tip. If you're not using the slab right away, covering it with plastic wrap works great. It helps hold the moisture in and prevents the surface from drying out too fast. Clay slabs can dry out quickly, so wrapping them up keeps them workable until you're ready to use them. Before applying any design, always start by compressing the clay on both sides using a rib tool. A rubber or palmer rib works the best. I'm using a soft palmer rib. This step is important. It helps to align the clay particles, which can reduce warping and cracking as your piece dries. I'm using this bike design and placing masking tape around the bike. Quick tip. I'm peeling the back off and cutting around the border, then placing it back on the silk screen because the material is pretty thin. And the backing helps keep the silk screen flat and stable while I'm taping, so I don't distort the design. Not everyone does this, but I like to, because it gives me a little more stability while rubbing the underglaze in. And there's not much room for error here, especially around the edges. Once the tape is in place, I'll peel the backing off and lay it onto the clay. For this bike, I'm using Spectrum Bright Blue underglaze. Before applying the underglaze to the silk screen, it's really important to get the consistency just right. You want the underglaze to be about the consistency of cream cheese. If your underglaze is too thick, it won't push through the mesh of the silk screen, leaving you with spotty or broken patterns. If it's too thick, you can add water, but just a touch at a time. If it's too thin, it'll run underneath the silk screen and blur the design. If the underglaze is too thin, you can loosen the cap and let it dry out some more. If you don't have that kind of time, you can use a medium. This one is by Mako. You don't need much. Mix until you get the right thickness. Place the silk screen onto the wet clay. You want your clay surface to be nice and smooth. Because the clay is wet, the silk screen should stay put. I simply use my fingers to rub the underglaze through the silk screen. Make sure the silk screen doesn't move while you're working. I don't want to press too hard because I could misshapen the soft clay. Gently lift a corner to check if the underglaze has come through. If any spots didn't fully transfer, lay the silk screen back down and rub into those areas again. I'm also trying this scraper tool. I've used it before, and honestly, it doesn't work well for me, but it might work for you if you'd like to try it out. This one doesn't work for me either. I'll continue to use my finger. Once the underglaze has come through and you're happy with the coverage, carefully lift off the silkscreen to reveal the design. Now that the bike image is transferred, I'm going to use a cookie cutter to cut out the shape. Make sure the bike is centered. Then press the cookie cutter down. This gives me a clean, consistent shape every time. Smooth the edges and let it dry. This time I'm applying the silkscreen bike to leather hard clay. I'm using the Spectrum Bright Blue, Black, and Baby Pink. Even though the clay is firmer than wet clay, the silkscreen still sticks to the clay. Starting with bright blue underglaze for the bike, using my finger to rub the underglaze through the screen. Make sure the screen stays still. Keep in mind that there are 3 stages of leather hard clay. You can check out the post on my Pottery Crafters website where I go through all 7 stages of clay, including the 3 stages of the leather hard clay. If the clay is in the stiff leather hard stage, the silkscreen may slip more easily when applying the underglaze. Then use the black underglaze for the handlebar and seat. Then the baby pink underglaze to fill in the flowers and butterflies. I think this will add a nice pop of color. Once the underglaze is applied, carefully lift the corner to check the transfer. Rub the underglaze into the areas that didn't cover. And there it is, a multicolored bike design transferred onto the leather hard clay. I did get a little smudge of underglaze outside the design. Grab the scraping tool and gently remove it. That's one of the benefits of working on leather hard clay. It's easy to clean up small mistakes. I'm going to use the same cookie cutter to cut out the shape. Set these aside and let them dry. Now I'm going to test how the silkscreen performs on bone-dry clay. For this plate, I'm using this tree silkscreen and Spectrum yellow, lime green, and bright blue underglazes. Since bone dry is very delicate and porous, it behaves differently than wet or leather hard clay. So this time I'm securing it with masking tape. I fold the tape over in 2 corners to easily lift the silkscreen off the plate. Make sure the silkscreen is flat on this surface and doesn't move. Now rub the underglaze through the screen. I'm partially mixing them for a more marbled effect. I don't want a solid blended color. I want to see the variations of yellow, green, and blue come through the pattern, giving the tree more depth. Since the surface is bone dry, you don't want to apply too much pressure. For some really good underglaze tips, I have a video on 21 essential underglaze tips. I left the link for you below in the show notes. Lift and see how it turned out. Check for any bare spots. If so, carefully place the silkscreen back onto the surface and rub more underglaze in the area. Keep checking until the underglaze comes through. That's the nice part about these silkscreens. There's room for error. You can lift it on and off the plate as long as you keep it in the same spot. The colors broke up nicely in this pattern. I do have a smudge by the moon though. Wipe the underglaze off with a clean, damp smoothing sponge. The pattern still looks good on the bone-dry clay surface. I'll set it aside to dry. Now I'm going to try applying the silkscreen onto a bisque plate. Apply new tape. I want the new tape to have a clean grip. to stick well to the bisque surface. That's what I love about these silk screens. They're so durable and don't tear easily. They do last a long time. I haven't worn one out yet. It's important that the silk screen lays nice and smooth against the plate. If there are any wrinkles or bubbles, the underglaze could seep under the pattern. For this one, I'm using the mix of colors again: yellow, lime green, and bright blue. Applying them with my finger to keep control and create that swirly blended effect. You can hit the like button anytime during this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever a new video comes out. I want to make sure I press the color through the silk screen without shifting it. Even a little movement could distort the pattern. Carefully lift up the silk screen and take a peek. If anything looks light, carefully lay it back down and go over that area again. Looks good. Now I'll remove the silk screen fully to reveal the tree design. Oops! A little underglaze on the side of the plate and near the grass. I'll just wipe the side with the regular damp sponge and use a damp smoothing sponge around the grass area where it's more delicate. There, we're all cleaned up and the tree design looks great on the bisque surface. Now that everything's completely bone dry, I'm ready to load the kiln for the bisque firing. When loading silk screened or any underglaze pieces, you want to be extra careful and make sure the underglaze isn't touching any other clay. If it does, the underglaze will transfer onto the piece it's touching during the firing. I'm flipping this plate over and gently setting another on top. There's no underglaze transfer risk as long as the underglaze isn't making contact. That's one of the downsides of using underglaze on greenware. You can't stack as much as you could with plain clay. But there are still ways to be creative with the space. I'll fire to cone 04 with no hold, which is the recommended bisque temperature for glazing these pieces. Now that the bisque firing is complete, it's time to prep the pieces for glazing. Make sure your hands are clean and dry, or you can wear gloves. I always start by wiping my bisqueware with a clean damp sponge. This helps remove any leftover ceramic dust or debris that might be sitting on the surface and may interfere with the glaze during the glaze firing. Now it's time to apply the wax resist. Carefully brushing the wax resist onto the bottom of the bisque plate around the foot ring. Wax resist makes it much easier to remove any glaze before firing. I'm using the Speedball clear glaze. Before applying any glaze, it's important to mix it really well. I'm using my Hamilton Beach blender, which is my absolute favorite for mixing jars of glaze. I always pour the glaze through a strainer before applying it to my pottery. This step catches any remaining clumps that could leave lumps on the finished surface. I'm starting with the bottom of the plates. Applying the first coat of the clear glaze, it gives great coverage. For clear glaze, I make sure that the first coat is applied thinly. Rotate the plate on a banding wheel to make sure I get the full even coverage without overlapping too much. Since this plate has the underglaze decoration that hasn't been refired, I have to be extra careful while glazing. I'm applying the glaze with a light even touch using smooth even strokes. I can easily smudge the underglaze if I overwork the brush. I really love how the Speedball clear glaze goes on pink. It makes it easy to see where I've already glazed. Make sure the glaze overlaps slightly, but not too much. This keeps the finish consistent without building up in any one area. Let them dry. Now apply the clear glaze over the bite designs. Brush a thin, even coat with the soft fan brush, repeating the same process, light pressure and even coverage. Let these dry before applying the next coat. Now for the second coat of clear glaze. The second coat goes on much smoother than the first. That's because the first coat has already sealed the surface a bit, giving the glaze a base to glide over. I'm being careful not to apply it too thick. If clear glaze is too heavy, it can come out cloudy or milky after firing, especially over detailed designs like these. I'm only applying 2 coats total, which is usually just right for clear glaze. I get a glossy finish without any distortion. Before loading into the kiln, I always wipe off any glaze from the bottom of the pottery. Even a small amount of glaze on the bottom can fuse the piece to your kiln shelf. So this is an essential step. Now it's all set to dry completely before going into the kiln for a glaze fire. I'm firing this load to cone 5, which is a great temperature for mid-fire clear glazes like this one I'm using. I've set it to hold at peak temperature for just 10 minutes. That small hold helps ensure the heat distributes evenly throughout the kiln. Now that the kiln is finished firing, let's open it up. This is always the most exciting part, when all of your work comes to life. Wow, the silkscreen designs turned out beautifully. This bike design that was applied to the wet clay turned out really nice. The underglaze went on the wet clay really well. The fine details, especially on the spokes and flowers and butterflies, stayed crisp and sharp. This is exactly what I hoped for with the silkscreen on the wet clay. Sharp edges and smooth color. This bike that was applied on leather hard clay turned out nice also. The detail on the wheels and basket and even the butterflies came through nicely. I really love how the pink flowers contrast with the deep blue of the bike. It adds a nice touch. I did miss a smudge. It's not too noticeable and still looks good. This plate that was applied to the bone-dry clay turned out well. Even though bone-dry clay can be a bit tricky to work with, the silkscreen did surprisingly well. The masking tape did help to hold it in place. I love how the swirled underglaze colors turned out. A nice blend of the colors that adds depth and movement to the design. You can absolutely use silkscreens on bone-dry pieces. The silkscreen that I applied to the bisque plate turned out well. I also love the way the underglaze colors blended. The final design has this beautiful, almost watercolor effect. The color variations give the tree so much more depth. This is a good example of how silkscreen on bisque can work. The clear glaze did enhance the design without clouding it. And of course I will be doing this silkscreen pattern again. There you have it, a fun and easy way to put some cool designs on your pottery. And it really doesn't take long to do it, especially after you get the hang of it. These are the plates that I applied the underglaze to the bisque ware. And these are the plates where I applied the silkscreen to the bone-dry clay. And the clear glaze turned out really good. Nice and shiny. These were done on the leather hard clay, which I think they turned out pretty good. Now these were done on the wet clay. And for me, I think it turned out the best on the wet clay. But if you can't do it at that stage of clay, it's good to know you have options. You watching helps me to make more videos like this one. For more underglaze videos, you can check out my How to Bubble Glaze video or how to sponge and splatter video. If you do, I get to play with more clay. Let's stay dirty